Hello and welcome to the agenda. I am Ajay Kaul. Today we will discuss how vaccine diplomacy can benefit India. It's an opportunity that India can cash on, and India in fact is gearing up to do so. I'm talking about export of the two coronavirus vaccines which have been developed in India and approved for emergency use. India has promised to supply the vaccines to the neighboring countries and others who show interest. So how will this benefit India in diplomatic and strategic terms? We will discuss it in the agenda today. We have with us retired diplomat Ambassador Dr. Deepak Vora and Ambassador Anil Trigunayat. But before we begin our conversation, let's have a look at this small report.
As India gets ready for rollout of coronavirus vaccines next week, it is also working on a plan to reach out to other countries and further strengthen its goodwill. According to plans, India will give priority to its neighbors in export the vaccines, and that too at affordable rates. This is particularly important since China is aggressively involved in wooing the neighbors of India through the loans. Even before the two vaccines, Covaxin and Covishield, were approved for emergency use last week, the Ministry of External Affairs had asked India's envoys in the neighboring countries and other nations to assess the need for the vaccine in countries of their posting. Foreign Secretary Harsh Vardhan Shringla, during his recent trip to neighboring countries like Nepal, Bangladesh and Myanmar, conveyed to their leaders India's commitment to provide the vaccine made in India at affordable rates. China too is offering its vaccine, but India's neighbors are said to be inclined to prefer Indian vaccines, considering India's excellent and proven record in the pharma sector. Not only countries like South Asia, but even beyond, like South Africa and Brazil, have evinced interest in Indian vaccines. This is mainly because there are question marks over the efficacy of Chinese vaccine. Earlier this year, after COVID-19 explosions started, there was demand by many countries, including the US, for hydrochloroquine or HCQ medicine to contain the damage. So it is a great opportunity for India to unleash its vaccine diplomacy, which will benefit humanity and re-emphasize India's position as a global leader. Bureau Report.
Now let's welcome our guests, Ambassador Vora and Ambassador Trigunayat. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure to have you on our program. So let me begin by referring to Ambassador Vora about the plans of India to export vaccine with priority to neighboring countries. So how do you see this policy as in the diplomatic terms?
May I first say an honor? Always to learn from you, Mr. Kaul, given your vast experience. And then you have my very distinguished and brilliant colleague, Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, also on the show. Anil, always a pleasure to meet you. Sir, may I answer your question by looking at the pre-vaccine days? Ultimately, you judge a country's competence by its track record.
Right.
When the Wuhan virus enforced a complete lockdown of the country for several weeks, followed by a partial easing, the functioning of government, society, was severely disrupted. My own ministry has had any number of challenges which we discharge commendably. For example, sir, people don't remember 60,000, 70 countries set them out, apart from bringing back hundreds of thousands of our sons and daughters from 150 countries. Now,
Right.
as part of India's leadership role, we made medicines like chloroquine and paracetamol large quantities available to countries to meet their domestic requirements in a crisis situation. This has been part of our imaginative medicine diplomacy, which generated very positive sentiments towards India, with so many world leaders conveying their gratitude. Now, the much maligned Donald Trump, आज तो उससे कोई मोहब्बत नहीं करता, सब नफरत करते हैं after what happened in Washington D.C. You know, he said in a tweet, and if you permit, I'll quote.
He threatened India that if you don't give us, we will have.
And let me quote this tweet. Extraordinary times require even closer cooperation between friends. Thank you, India and the Indian people, for the decision on hydroxychloroquine will not be forgotten. Now, this kind of thing coming from the President of the United States.
No, Ambassador Vora, you forgot that he threatened India that if you don't give me HCQ.
I'm only going with this public.
Yeah.
We won't go behind the scenes. But the way India responded to the requirements, we sent our teams out, we sent these rapid response teams to many countries, Kuwait, Seychelles, Comoros. We did a lot. And let me just say, sir, that the way we responded, it reminds me of the catch line. Virginia Slims वो बड़े पतले cigarette होते थे औरतों के लिए. So in the 1970s, there was a catch line. They were encouraging women to smoke, and the catch line was, "You've come a long way, baby." And I can say that about India. The speed with which we responded, the effectiveness. Right. Now I'll give, Ambassador Anil Sigunath would like to talk. Thereafter, I will come back to the issue of how we are going to deal with the vaccine. I was now talking about pre-vaccine. Our track record is established. But look at China's track record. Let me say that also, sir. What am I afraid
No,
of?
I'm coming to China. China is all I kept for supplementaries. But I wanted to ask this. So maybe Ambassador
We'll let Ambassador Anil Sigunath deal with it.
Yeah, Ambassador Sigunath. So when we talk about vaccine diplomacy, as Ambassador Vora talked about the medicine diplomacy, now it is now turn of vaccine diplomacy. So how is it going to benefit India?
Ajay ji, firstly, to be with my distinguished senior as reporter on this panel and on your channel. You see, we have to look at it from the context of India's foreign policy ingredients. How do we look at the world? We look at the world perspective to that particular. The world is and that is why when we are to help people, whether it was providing the aid and other African countries, it was in that context, and because of that India became a policy of the world, and today it is turning out in hub. We are producing vaccines for different vaccines, including the Oxford vaccines, others, and India invented our own also. Of great. So, if you remember, we follow Prime Minister Modi came on scene at the neighborhood first policy.
Right.
And in 2014, is taking over. He had invited all the neighborhood. Similarly, in the wake of the vaccine, in the wake of pandemic, we had this of the faculty, and India offered and created and therefore our first priority to provide also, once we have after our interest, to provide it to our neighbors. And now all our ambassadors are already talking to various countries, large countries, like for example, Ambassador mentioned about Trump. Tell you about Ambassador of the President of Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro. He said he thanked India, saying that it was a Sanjeevani. We have that kind of, in my view, apart from the therapeutic value, apart from helping people in distress and need, it also provides a great profit for us.
Right.
People understand India other than expansionist of the friends and the neighbor.
Right. So this is kind of soft power which India can always utilize. So Ambassador Vora, coming to China. So China, and if you talk about neighborhood, China has lately been very aggressive in trying to woo our neighbors, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. Now it is our turn to, through the diplomacy of vaccine, to maybe tell our neighbor that we are better friends. Is it?
Sir, you are aware that during these difficult times of the raging pandemic, the pharmaceutical industry of India went into overdrive, and we were supplying medicines to so many countries. PM Modi had said in his statement, you recall that, sir, to the 75th virtual session of the UN General Assembly in India last year, he said, we are here to help. Whoever wants our help, we'll give it. We're not going to keep it for ourselves. It's very simple. China, the philosophy is, my God is money. India's philosophy is, service is my God. That is the difference between the two. The goodwill that we earned because of the relief that we provided in the early years of the pandemic, and now that we are going to supply the vaccine, and the Prime Minister has said that India's vaccine production and delivery capacity will be used to help all of humanity. Sir, ये बहुत कम लोग कहते हैं
कि पूरी दुनिया वासुदेव कुटुंबकम, the world is one family. We walk the talk. This man, whether you like him or not, but Prime Minister Narendra Modi has made it clear, India will help everybody. So may I just add, there is a well-known company called Fitch Solutions that provides data research and analytical services. So they have divided the Asian economies into three groups. Those that can plausibly vaccinate most of the people in priority groups such as healthcare workers and senior citizens like me. Not like you. You're too young.
But Ambassador
They
Vora,
can do it by June.
But
Let me
Ambassador,
finish, sir.
yeah.
They said we will do it by June, some countries. Some will do it by September and some will take longer. You know the first group who will do it by June, according to Fitch Solutions, not according to Narendra Modi or Deepak Vora. The first group includes Malaysia, Hong Kong, China, Singapore and India. Now, I'm not saying this Fitch Solutions. And the rest of the world is looking. Bill Gates kya bola? Kitni shabashi di? And that Director General of that racket called WHO, wo to ab hamara chamcha ban gaya. Kitni taarif kar raha hai. It's fantastic how the world is rallying around India.
But Ambassador Vora, most important part is, which I want to highlight, is the credibility of your vaccine. China lacks
Absolutely. But China has no credibility in anything.
So that is what I'm saying.
About the vaccine. Would you offer to volunteer to take a Chinese Sinopharma or whatever vaccine? I mean, except for the poor Pakistanis or the North Koreans or Iranians or anybody else who can't afford to buy it from somewhere else, they are going to use it.
Ambassador Vora, you talked about Pakistan. I think PM of Pakistan was asked whether he will take Chinese vaccine. He said, "Dekha jayega." I am not too sure he will even take it. So, Ambassador Trigunath, so when we talk about credibility, India has a credibility, a proven record on pharma and particularly. So that is an advantage over China, isn't it?
That is true, absolutely.
Because there are question marks about the Chinese vaccine.
What we have to look at it that during this pandemic or this coronavirus, which is described as China or Wuhan virus, basically. So this is like that. So that is what China has done. That is why China's credibility. See what China did was firstly they hit the thing and when complicit with the WHO Director General, which was exposed, and thereafter they indulged in wolf warrior diplomacy. They tried to create problems with the country, but they don't recognize that eventually it's going to fight. But at the same time, you have brand. See, most of our pharma APIs and others are dependent on imports from China. That's why a new thing has come about. I believe that this vaccine, pharmaceuticals, the other things that are going to give it priority to the government. So it has come up as a great opportunity for India to emerge once again, to become really the vaccine or savior of the world in many ways, I would say. And I think India has always believed in share and care attitude. If you were to look at our capacity, it was provided to over 160 countries. And even the paracetamol we provided to 100 countries. We sent the rapid response teams. Shared. So that's what we share. And that's what has given you the trust of the people. They look at in China has produced the vaccine. It is 2 or 3 vaccines. It has the capacity. It is not very different from the rest of the world.
That is what I was pointing out, that they have the capacity to vaccinate large population, but the issue is about the question mark on the credibility of their vaccine, isn't it?
देखिए क्रेडिबिलिटी की बात है, जहाँ तक की बात थी कि लैटिन अमेरिका में वहाँ पे वो मैक्सिको हेल्थ केयर वर्कर को फाइजर वैक्सीन लगने के बाद so the credibility of any vaccine is as the results show, frankly. And as Ambassador Vora said, those who cannot afford this vaccine, like China has an opportunity today to basically retrieve its image somehow. If it behaves like a responsible international partner, which it is not, that's why it continues to decimate the stage. So we don't have to worry about it. We have to work hard. And I want, once again, last thing I would like to say, there's no point we rate China, it's an open. We have to become better than China.
No, Ambassador Trinidad, I'm not saying we should be worried, but I am saying this is the time when our neighbors would learn whom to
Neighbors,
whom to trust on.
listen one thing about our
उनको पता
neighbors.
लगेगा कि दोस्त कौन है हमारा.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt,
बिल्कुल sir.
Ambassador Anil. Today's Wall
We
Street
have
Journal,
already
sir, I
told
subscribe to
all
it.
our neighboring countries
Yeah, sorry.
that there
Go
will be
ahead.
an exception to the rule. They will be provided the vaccine at a preferential rate. That's what we are telling them.
Right.
But in many cases, I think the 150 countries that have provided the earlier medicine, more than 90% of them they were gifts. So very likely we'll be providing also under the grant. We have already given them huge lines of credit and the funds and assistance. We are not looking at making profit out of it.
Right.
And that's what they have to look at it. Rather than getting further into the tech or tech side.
So,
That they
Ambassador,
have to
yeah.
forget one thing. I mean, let's be realistic. China is as much a part neighbor these countries as India,
Right.
and they have learnt over time to play together for their own benefit, and they play one against the other. But they have realized now, whether Sri Lanka or others, India, they have cultural relations, and we will not give them diplomacy indulgence, but at the same time,
I think
them the assistance.
Ambassador Vora wants to
Yes,
disagree on something.
No, I just wanted
it's
to
okay.
make this point that the Serum Institute of India, founded over 50 years ago, is the world's largest manufacturer of vaccines by volume. And of course, this will enable us to establish the basis for the domestic network of supply. आज के Wall Street Journal में एक opinion piece है. It says the world, and I'm quoting sir, including rich countries, should take a leaf from India's book when it comes to manufacturing crucial items like the vaccine that might encounter massive demand surges and where national priorities come to the fore.
Right.
Prime Minister, while inaugurating that trade corridor today, said कि 2 vaccines आ रही हैं कुछ दिनों में, हर भारतवासी का सर ऊंचा होगा. Sir, आज मेरी छाती 56 इंच की है. Because today India has showed the world what we are capable of, and I thank India's scientists, I thank India's doctors, and I thank news anchors like you for spreading the message across the world that those who have to choose between China and India, if you choose India, Pepsi जैसे कहता था, यही है right choice, baby.
So I am also trying to highlight that apparently the world is acknowledging the fakery of China. If you talk about Nepal, apparently Nepal is also, kind of under influence, Chinese influence, but they are not ready to take Chinese vaccine. Ambassador Vora.
Absolutely. I mean, they don't want to kill their own people. The fellows want to survive.
So again,
they
national
know
interest.
that they can trust us. They know that they cannot trust the Chinese. Sir, trust deficit, that is China's. Nobody has trust in China. There is threat from China. There is fear of China. And there is anger at China's behavior. How is China going to deal with all this? In a few years from now, we'll be reading in history, होता था एक communist देश called China. बाद में सही हो गया, line पे आ गया. ये खत्म हो रहा है, sir. You are watching it every day. You know it as well as I do. The kind of pushback against China taking place in our immediate neighborhood, even in Pakistan, mind you, whether it's Nepal or it's Sri Lanka or it's Maldives or it's Bhutan, they are all saying no. Our future is inextricably linked to a wonderful country that is Bharat, also known as India.
So again, I come to the thrust point is that it is time for India to emphasize again, as I understand that, we know it. In pharma sector, India is a world player. World
Leader.
class, but it has not been utilized as much as it. It has been underutilized in terms of diplomacy and reach out to countries. Ambassador Vora, what do you say?
I say, our exports of pharma products, especially the basic active pharmaceutical ingredients, etc., has been going up at several $1 billion. China has come in and tried to cut us out of the market. They have not succeeded. So increasingly, it daur aata hai when people say, look, I prefer my tried and tested supplier rather than this new fellow who's supplying me all rubbish. You know, the Europeans, when they got all that PPE from China, what problems they had, Netherlands, Spain, Greece, all of them just rejected the consignment. Then the Chinese went around tweeting all their embassies, no, you bought it from some company that is not approved. We also rejected a lot of the equipment. The ICMR, Indian Council of Medical Research, said please don't buy it from these fellows because it's pretty useless stuff. And the Chinese had no scruples about this, and the world is aware Look at what is happening to their apps in the United States. Donald Trump has just issued an order banning them. They are not going to sell sensitive technology to China. The whole world is now waking up to the Chinese threat. Agar main Xi Ping Pong hota, to main jaake kahin retire ho jata. But I don't think it's going to happen in our.
Okay, Ambassador Trigunath, as I mentioned about pharma sector, export of pharma sector or being utilized as a diplomacy, tool of diplomacy has been underutilized. And I know, certain deals, with I think EU, our trade deal could not take place. I think pharma sector was one of the tricky areas. Ambassador Trigunath, what do you say on that?
We had a problem in exporting pharma products to China.
Right.
And that has been partly solved because we are importing a lot of API. There has been a tremendous trade deficit with China. So that was, but I don't agree with you that the army has pharmaceutical strength to regain trust of people. It's precisely because of that, of this vaccine, that India provides vaccine, especially the developing world. If you remember South Africa, India had a major Western world with regard to the hyper. We have provided the AIDS vaccine, different kind of diseases all over Africa. And today India has a name to counter it. We have nearly as much population as India is Africa, and that's true. We are the largest supplier to the United States and to the European Union. So the problem with the Western countries is they are monopolistic in nature. They want to control the market. They don't want the Indian companies to get their market share. When I was I remember the Pfizer and the others, Dr. Reddy's and Red Taxi at the time. Today we have 25% market share as far as the drugs are concerned.
Why I said is like we produced best quality medicines and at lowest cost. So maybe we could have done much more in the export sector.
I think we have done.
I think, Mr. Kaul, look at the number of people who come to India for medical treatment.
I think one by
what
one.
we call medical tourism.
Yeah.
Sorry. We have 2 million fellows who came last year in 2020, all coming for medical treatment and not from poor African countries. Some come from very rich countries. So India's medical capability is well known.
No,
exploiting that.
Ambassador Vora, I'm not talking about medical tourism. I know that, but I'm talking about export. Harnessing the export potential of pharma sector.
Oh, it's rising.
Like
the growth rate of
like we did in service sector.
Ajay, one thing. One thing you should also remember that India itself is 1.3 billion people. So everything is not exportable. You need to look after your population first.
I think we have a lot.
Production of that and the export of this. Substantial exports, actually. I'm to think of figures. Yes, always better. But as of now, if you remember, 60% of APIs are also imported from China.
Right.
So that has to be replaced over time. Our industry has to gear up. It is not gear up. It is the companies that are exporting, if you remember. So it is for our pharma companies to gear up. But today they are ranking among the companies.
Right. So, Ambassador Vora, we have to close. You wanted to say something, I guess.
No, I just want to say, sir, as far as the virus is concerned, what will stay with me forever, China lied, people died. I don't know how they're going to live that down.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can point. In fact, I wanted to point out that WHO team wants to visit Wuhan to probe the origin of coronavirus, but China is stalling that also. China is stalling that also. But our program. Yeah, they have a lot to hide. So, but our program time is over. Thank you both of you for participating in this debate today.
Thank you so
Good
much.
to see you, sir.
Thank you. This is all in the agenda today. Thanks for watching. I'll be back with another important topic tomorrow. Till then, goodbye.